3 minutes ago, Congressman Eric Swalwell did something that every person in that hearing room will remember for the rest of their lives. He didn't shout. He didn't slam anything down or turn it into theater. He simply leaned forward, met Kash Patel's eyes, and asked a question so sharp, so perfectly aimed, so backed by ironclad proof that the entire chamber froze. Not the courteous pause where people wait politely. The kind of heavy, airless quiet that settles when everyone realizes they're witnessing something that was never meant to see daylight. Something powerful interests had spent years and millions to keep locked away forever. And Kash Patel. The man who strides into these rooms like the outcome is already decided. The man who's brushed off every congressional attack. The man whose whole public image rests on being untouchable. Had nothing left. No clever dodge. No practiced line. Just silence. And the faint sound of 15 years of hidden documents finally cracking open in public. If you're new here, subscribe now and turn on notifications. This isn't wrapping up today. This is the first real crack, and I want you to catch every piece as it falls. Watch this all the way through, because the second Swalwell opens that folder and starts reading those words aloud, the look on Kash Patel's face will explain more than 11 months of his carefully worded statements ever could. I'll break down exactly what that expression revealed. But first, you need to see how we reached this point. This didn't begin this morning. It started much earlier. And what happened in that room today is the end of a long buried thread most people never knew existed. Let me walk you through the setup, because the small details paint the picture. Senate Judiciary Committee, afternoon oversight session, originally listed as routine. Budget lines, staffing updates, the usual procedural grind that fills C-SPAN hours and empties the galleries. That's what it was supposed to be. Patel's team got the agenda 3 days prior. Nothing out of the ordinary. What they didn't catch, what they couldn't have caught, because Swalwell's office buried it in dry procedural language, was that Swalwell had quietly requested the session stay open to the public. His stated reason, public interest in transparent oversight of federal law enforcement. Inside Patel's circle, someone probably skimmed it as standard posturing. They'd seen it before. They were dead wrong. Eric Swalwell, California congressman, former federal prosecutor, lead impeachment manager during the first Trump trial, doesn't push for open sessions to score points. He does it when he wants a witness answering on camera, in public, on the permanent record, with no chance to later claim the exchange was twisted or private. He wanted the world to witness this. Every lens, every microphone, every syllable. And now we know exactly why. Before I tell you what was inside that folder, before I walk you through what Swalwell read into the Congressional record this afternoon, I need you to hold one thought. You've probably asked yourself at some point why the Epstein files have stayed buried so long. Why every push for release hits the same barriers. National security, active investigations, privacy safeguards. The same excuses, the same delays, the same wall. You probably figured the reason was tangled. Some massive bureaucratic knot too complex to unravel. What Swalwell laid out today shows the reason isn't complicated at all. It fits inside 19 documents, and every single one carries the same name. We're getting ahead though. Let's step back to the start. To really grasp why today hit so hard, go back to February this year. 11 days after Kash Patel was confirmed FBI Director, his office issued an internal directive to the Reclassification Review Board. Not a standard review, an expedited one, meaning it jumped the line. Treated as urgent. The target, all Epstein-related documents that mention current or former government officials and their close associates. That's the exact wording from the directive itself. Swalwell's legal team first spotted it as a footnote. 7 lines buried in a 47-page FBI legal brief responding to a FOIA appeal. Most people would have skimmed past. Swalwell's team didn't. They flagged it, pulled the thread, filed a targeted motion for disclosure. Lost at first, appealed, fought in federal court, won a partial release order, and spent the next 6 weeks piecing together exactly what that directive had done. What it produced was a list. 31 documents reviewed, 19 reclassified, 19 files that had already been cleared for public release under the previous administration's declassification process, pulled back, moved to restricted status, vanished into the shadows again. And here's the detail that shifts everything. The detail Swalwell carried into that hearing room with ironclad proof of. Every single one of those 19 reclassified documents contains references to Donald Trump. Every one. Think about that for a second. Not most. Not some. All 19. Reclassified in the first 2 months of Kash Patel's tenure. That's not chance. That's not oversight. That's a pattern. And patterns, unlike accidents, have reasons. The question Swalwell came to ask today was straightforward. What's the reason? The question Patel couldn't answer is the same one. Patel arrived the way he always does. 3 lawyers, 2 aides, that signature walk, shoulders back, chin high, the measured step of someone who's faced down enough rooms to stop feeling the pressure. He took his seat at the witness table, arranged his notes, gave the chairman a quick nod. He looked almost bored, like a chess master settling in front of a board he already solved. The first 45 minutes did nothing to shake that confidence. Other members went first. Appropriations, personnel shifts, surveillance rules, the usual ground. Patel handled it the way he always does. Answer the question you wish they'd asked. Give the appearance of cooperation while giving up nothing. Run the clock without looking rushed. He's masterful at it. You don't last in Washington as long as Kash Patel without becoming masterful. Then Swalwell picked up the microphone, and the room changed. I've watched enough hearings to spot the difference between a politician grandstanding and a prosecutor closing in. It's not volume or anger. It's a stillness that feels more dangerous than motion. A patience that carries absolute certainty about what's coming. The room sensed it before Swalwell said a word. Even Patel sensed it. His posture straightened slightly. Eyes flicked to his lawyers for a split second before returning to the mic. He felt the shift. He just didn't know what it was yet. No one did, except Swalwell. Director Patel, he began, voice quiet, almost pleasant. I want to discuss a specific set of documents with you today. Patel nodded, still composed, standard reply ready. Of course, Congressman. I'll do my best to assist the committee. Pause on that. I'll do my best. Swalwell caught it instantly. I'm not asking for your best, he said evenly. I'm asking for the truth. Let's see if those are the same thing. That was the opening cut. Invisible unless you were paying attention. But I was. And I saw Patel's jaw tighten, just 2 millimeters, because Swalwell had just drawn a public line between assistance and truth on the record before a single page was turned. And he'd invited Patel to cross it. Patel crossed it. They almost always do. And Swalwell knew he would. That's why it was the first move. Director Patel, I want to ask you about the classification review process your office launched in February. Specifically, the expedited review directive sent to the Classification Review Board on February 11th. Are you familiar with that directive? Patel didn't flinch. Congressman, classification reviews are routine procedural steps the Bureau conducts continuously as part of our commitment to transparency within. That's not what I asked. Silence. Are you familiar with that specific directive? Patel didn't flinch. Congressman, classification reviews are routine procedural steps the Bureau conducts continuously as part of our commitment to transparency within. That's not what I asked. Silence. Are you familiar with that specific directive? Patel shifted, just a fraction. If you weren't watching closely, you'd miss it. I was watching. I've been briefed on the general nature of our ongoing review processes. General nature. That's a Patel classic. An answer that sounds like an answer but delivers nothing. Swalwell wasn't buying. He opened the folder slowly, deliberately. The way a prosecutor presents an exhibit when they know what's inside already decides the case. He lifted the first document, held it where cameras could zoom. According to this directive, partially disclosed under federal court order last month, the February review was specifically aimed at Epstein-related documents referencing current and former government officials and their close associates. He met Patel's eyes. That's not routine. That's targeted. Who set the scope? Patel glanced at his lawyers. One shifted. Patel raised a single hand. Small gesture, nearly invisible. But it meant, I've got this. He turned back. The directive you're referencing was part of a broader effort to ensure compliance with privacy protections for individuals not charged with any crime. Any individual, regardless of political affiliation. Privacy protections? Swalwell repeated slowly. For whom exactly? For any individual referenced in those materials. Swalwell nodded once. Then he pulled the second document. Here, everything sped up. The second wasn't a directive. It was a list. 31 documents reviewed. 19 reclassified. 19 files previously cleared for public release. Gone, pulled back to restricted status within 60 days of Kash Patel taking office. Swalwell held it steady. 19 documents, Director. Cleared for release. Reclassified after you arrived. He paused, long enough for the gallery to register the faint sound of people barely breathing. How many of those 19 documents contain references to Donald Trump? Dead silence. I mean literal silence. I've described hearing room silences before. The polite pause, the calculated quiet of a politician gathering thoughts. This was different. This was 50 people holding the same breath at once. The silence of a room where everyone just realized the question they thought might come has actually been asked. Out loud, on camera, in the building where American law is made. Patel's face ran through 3 expressions in roughly 2 seconds. The flicker, a fraction where something raw broke through, something that looked unmistakably like being caught. The calculation, eyes going distant, sorting rapidly shrinking options. Then the mask slid back. The practiced, controlled, I'm still in command mask. Congressman, I'm not going to confirm or deny the specific subjects of any classified review process, because doing so would itself potentially compromise. Every single one, Swalwell said quietly, completely quietly, which somehow landed louder than any shout could. Every single one of the 19 reclassified documents contains references to Donald Trump. Everyone! He let it sit, let it hang in the room's air for several long seconds. That's not coincidence. That's a documented pattern inside your agency. And I want you to explain it to this committee, and to every American watching right now. I need to pause here and make something clear, because I know what some of you are thinking. Is this just politics? A Democrat taking shots at a Trump appointee for partisan gain? I want to answer that straight. What Swalwell presented today wasn't an accusation. It wasn't guesswork. It wasn't the usual hearing room theater that fades by dinner. He presented documents, FBI documents, a classification directive from Patel's own agency, a reclassification list from Patel's own review board, a pattern anyone with the public disclosure timeline can verify independently. This isn't one congressman's opinion about what the evidence means. This is the evidence, sitting on a table in a congressional hearing room. And the question of what it means is exactly the question the FBI Director of the United States refused, on camera, on the record, with no way to take it back, to answer. That matters, no matter your politics. It matters if you care about what federal law enforcement does with the power we've given it. And if you've stayed with me this far, if this is the kind of story that deserves a wider audience, please drop a like on this video right now. It costs you nothing. It helps get this to people who need to see it. This is the stuff that gets buried unless we push. Patel tried to pull it back after that. He always tries. But I've watched enough witnesses in enough rooms to know the difference between real recovery and performance recovery. What Kash Patel was doing in those final minutes was the latter. Going through motions, speaking words, waiting for the clock to save him. The real answer had already come, in 22 seconds of silence, in pale knuckles and a trembling water glass, in a voice that went quiet in a room full of cameras. That's the answer. That's the whole answer. And it's now in the public record forever. Subscribe. This story isn't finished.